Welcome to the Dark Ascent Podcast, where we enter into the deepest secrets of black magic and the left-hand path. This is episode 5, The Power of Satanic Imagery. To learn more about our work, please visit darkascent.org. Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast. I, as always, am Melektoth, and I'm here with my wife Elinara.
Hello.
And today we are talking about a very fun subject, which is satanic imagery. With all this black magic stuff, a lot of people sort of wonder why exactly we need to be all, edgy and using the satanic imagery, about Lucifer or Satan or Belial or whoever, whichever demons and whatnot. Is that all really necessary? Why do we use those? There are other systems of black magic who use other dark gods. There's a very popular one that uses Set from the Egyptian pantheon. And there are other systems that use even other gods from other systems. There are Norse, there's all sorts of different options out there. So why do we specifically use satanic imagery? I have a very good reason for it. And so I thought this would be a good subject to talk about today because especially coming from a law of attraction background, a lot of people like to keep it very general, like to keep things very, they talk about the universe. They like to not put names to things. And actually recently wrote an email about this to the mailing list about, these are real forces we're dealing with. They're real gods, real goddesses, real angels, real demons. And so, but a lot of the law of attraction people like to keep it nameless and not really put any mythology to it or names to it or forms to it or anything like that. It's just the universe, this or source.
That one I hate.
Or whatever, right? And that's what they like to do, and it's just this nice, comforting, light and fluffy, love and light sort of thing that the whole universe supports you and all the energies of the universe. In fact, I've mentioned them before, Abraham Hicks, one of the channeled entities, used to use this term, not anymore. I haven't heard this for years and years and years, but they used to call these things the fairies of the universe. No joke.
You're kidding me.
No,
I didn't even know this.
Really? I'm not joking at all. The fairies of the universe.
Oh my God, how much more light and fluffy can you
Right.
get?
The fairies of the universe would conspire to give you what you wanted, and they would work together to give you everything that you want, right? Now, they weren't necessarily saying they were literal fairies. It's just sort of a term they use to signify that, the forces of the universe are working in your favor. So this is the sort of context that a lot of law of attraction people come from. And so a lot of them will say, well, this demonic stuff is really dark. I mean, I like the light stuff, and not me personally, but someone coming from that context would say, so why would I use these dark entities, these demons, and it just seems really dark, and it might be uncomfortable for people like this. Like, why would I want to do that? It just seems better to, just use the universe and whatnot. I mean, that's, people might wonder, why should I bother with this? Okay. And it's a good question, and I've answered the question a lot in my mailing list and some articles, but I think it's a question that needs to be answered. And why specifically use satanic imagery? Why not use Set, or why not use the dark gods of other pantheons? I mean, the way I got introduced to black magic was Hades.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing.
And even, and I didn't go looking for him. He came to me and started working with me. You know what I mean? And even that is weird to, like, LOA people, right? So why do we do this? That's the question. So I've talked about darkness before, and in fact, a while ago, we had a webinar, Who is the Prince of Darkness? The Prince of Darkness is the sort of general term we use for the principle of darkness itself. And so we talked philosophically about what darkness is, why we use darkness instead of light, and what that's all about. And I will be summarizing some of that and extending and going deeper with some of that in our first Circle of Darkness newsletter. I'll talk about more about that later on.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. And so,
See, I'm learning things.
There.
I don't know what he has planned.
Yeah, well.
I just do what he says.
So, there is a reason we use darkness, and I've talked about rebellion. I talked about, why we rebel against default reality, and this has a lot to do with that. So, we have darkness, and I talked already about rebellion and kind of going against the universe and creating your own pathway and asserting your own will upon reality so that you don't get integrated into or merged into the all, right? So that's what we talked about rebellion. You can go back to episode 2 if you haven't heard about that yet. But again, specifically, why the satanic imagery? So for me, a lot of this is about mythology. Okay, now when I say mythology, if you're probably familiar with this person, but Joseph Campbell is a really good person who talks about mythology.
That's so cool.
Talked about mythology. And he said how important mythology is because it really shapes our culture. It shapes our life experience. Mythology doesn't mean something's false.
And I used to think that.
Right.
I used to equate that with something false.
In fact, mythology, and the things that are represented by mythology are quite real. Everything, and I've been trying to bring this out more in the last several podcasts. Everything is real. Your subjective universe, which is where mythology comes from, is real. So a good definition of mythology is that mythology explains in objective universe terms events happening in your subjective universe. I think that's a really good explanation of it. It describes, using terms of the objective universe, things that are happening in your subjective universe. And so mythology is quite real. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't have Zeus throwing lightning bolts. This is what I mean, the objective universe. He's not literally throwing lightning bolts, but what does that mean? What does, it mean to have a god of thunder and of, the sky and whatnot? What does that mean in your subjective reality, right? That's a real thing. That's a real force. And so, mythology is quite real. Everything you can imagine is real. Everything you can imagine is real. I mean, and I will go much deeper with this in future podcasts and other places, but everything you can imagine is real. Maybe not objectively real in this physical world, but it's all real in your subjective universe. And the subjective, as I've been saying, as I've been emphasizing, does not mean false or imaginary or made up or anything else. It's real, just subjectively real. And subjectively could mean for an entire culture. It could mean for an entire nation or entire religion.
So basically what you're saying is really, theoretically, every religion is real.
Is real, right. Every religion taps into a particular energy, a particular stream of consciousness, a particular thought form, so to speak. And this goes a little advanced that I won't go into here, but it's tapping into something absolutely real.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so absolutely. So that's not the issue. It's not that it's not real, everything is real.
Yeah, because everyone is so obsessed with what is the truth.
Yeah, I know.
But the thing is, anything can be.
Yeah, I started my spiritual path when I was 9 years old. And for the first many, many years of that path, my overarching question was, what is the truth? And if I found conflicts in a certain religion, then I would leave it. Because, well, it has conflicts, therefore it cannot be true. And eventually, probably just a few years ago, honestly, I realized, wait a second, it has nothing to do with truth. Because it's all true.
Yeah.
It's all true in a, I don't want to say a relative way, but as a subjective way.
Yeah.
But what it has to do with is what you want to experience, what you want to live. Do you want to live a jealous God ruling the universe and sending people to hell? Is that what you want to live?
And people do.
And people
They're weird, but they do.
Do you want to live, name whatever religion and what they believe in, right? A vengeful God or something like that. So it's all real. But the thing is that mythologies come in and out. They phase in and out of existence. So, I read an author recently, a black magician, who wrote this book about the left-hand path and black magic. And he said something like, neo-pagans, you have all these neo-pagans today, and I'm not trying to put down their religion necessarily, but just, it's an interesting observation. Neo-pagans don't always necessarily believe in their gods.
No, I've heard that too.
Right? Okay, if you go to ancient Greece, they literally believed in Zeus. Okay, maybe not the philosophers. But, the common people. You stop on the street, hey, what do you think about Zeus? They wouldn't mention Hades' name. This is what I heard, because I did a lot of research on Hades, because, he came to me. They wouldn't mention Hades' name because he's the god of death, and, they don't want to die.
Yeah.
They took it very literally. Zeus was literally the god of the sky. Okay, the god of thunder and whatnot. Apollo was literally the god of the sun. Mm-hmm. And so they very literally believed in these gods. Now, if you ask a neo-pagan who's into Greek mythology, what do you think about Zeus? Oh, he's good. He's a great deity. Well, do you think he throws lightning bolts? No, of course you don't think that, So neo-pagans are just interested generally in mythology. They don't really believe in the truths of those mythologies, right? Which I'm not saying that's a problem, but it's just an observation that, do these mythologies really have an impact on us today? Maybe some people. And I know some people are really into, let's say, the Norse. I've never been into Norse. But again, do you really literally believe those things are true? Now, if you go up to a Christian or a Muslim or someone like that, or even, let's say, a Hindu, they literally believe those things are true. Now, in another 1,000 years...
who knows?
I mean, those silly Christians, they believe this guy came down from the sky and was crucified on a cross and was supposed to save everyone by shedding his blood. Can you imagine, in 1,000 or 2,000 years, we might look back and be like, oh yeah, those silly people, they believed these things. And
this is why I wish we were immortal.
We could go back and we could travel to the future.
Yeah, that at least.
Yeah,
time travel,
right?
Or remember all our past lives,
right?
Or all our
future lives,
every life we've had.
Yeah. So people literally believe these things.
I don't know. Christianity's been going on for 2,000 years, so I don't know.
Well, we'll see if they go on for 4,000.
I know.
So, these mythologies don't really have the impact they once did. Zeus just doesn't have the power he once did, just because, he's honored maybe for what he represents, but he's not literally believed in.
It's like the book American Gods.
I love that book.
By Neil Gaiman. And it was just like that the gods live because of your belief in them.
Because of your belief, yeah. And then the old gods were dying away.
Oh, yeah. The things they tried to do.
Oh, yeah. So, what's the popular myth today in the West? Okay, now if you're in the East, it's going to be different. In the West, where I think most of my listeners are, I know I have some people from India and whatnot, but primarily we're from the West. What's the predominant mythology? Depending where you are, it's Christianity or it's Islam. Literally those two make up 2/3 of the world. So, if you're in the West, you're 95%, going to be familiar with these two religions. But in the world in general, 2/3 of the people believe in one of these two. Okay, because there's 2 billion Christians, a little less than 2 billion Muslims. So it's going on 4 billion people. I guess it's a little less than 2/3 now. We're 7 billion. So, whatever. About 60%. So a lot of the world, over half the world's population, believe in one of these two.
Isn't a billion of them Catholic or something?
Yeah, 1 billion Catholics. So that's a lot. These mythologies, and they are mythologies, but they are real in their own sense, just like the Greek gods are real still. But these mythologies are the most impactful, even if you're not Christian or Muslim. Now, here's the thing. I guarantee you about 90% of our listener base, and yes, I'm pulling statistics out of thin air, but I'm pretty sure it's true. I guarantee about 90% of our listener base were Christian or Muslim at one point in their life.
Maybe Jewish.
Maybe Jewish. So any of the Abrahamic religions. But, you're probably born into one of these religions. And later on, you converted out, maybe you became New Age or studied the occult or whatever it might be. But you were probably born into one of these religions. And I have heard of people, especially today with the New Age being so prevalent, being born New Age, or some people are born atheist or whatever. But most people, the great, great, great majority of people are born Christian or Muslim. Okay? So it has an impact on your life. And even if, let's just say, even if you never had any interaction with Christianity or Islam, your society did. As much as I hate to admit it, we're here in the U.S. This is a Christian society. Now, it wasn't started that way. I mean, the founding fathers are deists. It wasn't started that way, but it is absolutely a Christian society. I mean, I was talking to Elinara the other day about, presidents. You would never have a president who was not Christian. Not today. Probably not for hundreds of years, I would bet. You would never have a president outright neo-pagan or occult or New Age or anything besides Christian or even atheist.
That would be so interesting.
They would lose the evangelist vote and the Catholic vote and all the Christian votes pretty much. And what would they have? Next to nothing. It's a sad fact, but it's true. You could never become the president today if you weren't Christian. Never. It doesn't matter, you have to, even if you have to pretend, I think a lot of them pretend.
I do too.
But even if you have to pretend, you have to talk the talk.
Yeah.
You're going to have to convince them you're on their side, or else you're not going to be president. You
know what I would do? I would convince them until I got in there, and then...
Yeah, but then they dig up everything from your past. Oh, well, she studied, these deep, dark things in the past.
That's true.
I mean, they dig up everything from the time you were, 3 years old, pretty much, so... Anyway, but, I'm not trying to make this political, but it's the truth. You would never become president if you weren't Christian, even if in name only, right? You have to, speak to that side.
Yep.
So...
Democrats, I don't know.
Yeah, they still are, though.
Yeah.
They're more open, but there is still...
They have to say they are.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's these two mythologies, which come from the same place, Judaism, are highly relevant to our lives.
Yep.
And impact many, 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 many people. That's just the fact. Zeus probably doesn't impact your life. Hades probably doesn't impact your day-to-day life. You might believe in them, but the cultures from which that mythology sprang is not relevant to your life today. Just isn't. Nor is Set from the Egyptian pantheon or any of the others. Loki from Norse, A lot of people like Loki today. He's kind of become this popularized figure in modern media, but not relevant mythologically speaking. Okay, so everything comes from this Judeo-Christian Muslim mythology.
And I think that's the point, because the point of black magic is it's very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is to shock you.
Yes.
I think. To shock
that's a part of the point, yeah, definitely.
Well, sure. And it's I'm not saying you should ever do this, but if you were to tell someone, I believe in the Egyptian gods, okay, cool, whatever. But if you say, I'm a Satanist, then...
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're meant to put that fear into people, but it's everyone knows what that is. So it's more widespread, and it's
right.
More...
who's Set? I mean, okay.
Yeah, who's that?
So you're a pagan. I mean,
yeah.
That's not really much of a shock factor today, except for the most extreme of Christians. But Satanist. I mean, heck, we just had that satanic scare of the 80s, which was 100% manufactured. But that satanic scare of child sacrifice and all this stuff,
people fall for that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that's the exact point, is that Satanism has this sort of stigma.
Yep.
Now, so here's the point, is that Satan even just the word for a lot of people can trigger fear.
Yep.
You know, you're raised, you avoid Satan. Satan is bad. He tries to deceive you, whatever. Lucifer, sort of the same thing. I mean, they're the same, more or less, figure.
Mm-hmm.
Belial, most people aren't familiar with him as much, although I know some people who are. He is mentioned in the Bible. Azazel. He's a popular one for paranormal shows, apparently. I don't know why.
No, just that one show.
Yeah, I know, but I've heard him in other places too.
Yeah. He's a scapegoat. What do you expect?
He's a scapegoat, exactly. So, these demonic figures, these Abrahamic-based demonic figures, have huge relevance today. Because Satan is the one, he's the adversary, he's the one who, according to popular belief, and I think this is believed by both Muslims and Christians, took 1/3 of the angels and left heaven, right? I mean, turned them against God. So, I mean, talk about rebellion, right? And that has huge relevance today because people literally believe this. Now, I'm not saying I literally believe that. Obviously, I don't. I believe there is a Satan, like a being called Satan and a being called Lucifer and whatnot. I don't believe he literally took 1/3 of the Christian angels and turned them against the Christian God. I mean, that's fully playing into that mythology, but this does exist and it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful because so many, like, billions of people believe this. So many billions of people believe this, right? So it has high relevance for us and it's easy. Black magic is challenging both to your own ego and obviously to others. Now, no one asks you to be a martyr and to, you know, get fired from work, or if your family's going to kick you out if you're living with your family, or for example, and they're going to kick you out if they realize what you're doing. No one's asking you. It's not like Christianity where you have this, you know, persecution complex. We're being persecuted. But look, it's challenging. And Elinara knows this because she's going through this. It's easy to say, yeah, you know, I follow Set, or I follow Loki, or I follow Ahriman. I'll talk about them later. You know, that's easy. It's just, you know, you're just another pagan. Maybe a dark pagan, but you're just another pagan.
Yeah.
I follow Lucifer. I follow Satan. I'm a Satanist. I'm a Luciferian, whatever. That takes courage. That's challenging. And you can speak to that, can't you?
Yeah. And yeah, because it is. The thing is, when you're a Christian, and if you tell someone that you're not a Christian anymore, they could kick you out.
Yeah.
They really could. You know, you could probably get kicked out for being a Satanist, or they make you go get an exorcism or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
People have tried that.
You know, I had huge respect for someone in the Circle of Darkness. I didn't tell you about this yet because it just happened, but this lady who signed up for it, the Circle of Darkness newsletter, which is our print newsletter we're just starting. And she said, you know, I live with my parents and they're Christian. Can I get it digitally? And I responded and I said, well, you know, I would highly prefer you do it in print, but I understand, like, if you're going to be in a precarious situation where they could kick you out, or something really negative could happen, you could be in harm's way or in danger in some way if you'd get an envelope from, you know, Dark Ascent or whatever. If that's the situation, you know, then I understand and I'll send it to you digitally. But I highly encourage you that if at all possible, you take the print copy. And I didn't get a response, and I'm sort of thinking, well, you know, she'll get back to me and she'll probably say digital. I get a response back a little bit later on, and she said, it was in response to one of my daily emails. So she was saying she liked the email, and then she said, oh, by the way, my address is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that took so much courage. I don't know the exact situation, but that took so much courage.
Wow. I don't know if I could have done that.
Yeah. I'm like, wow. And I told her, I said, that really took a lot of courage to, you know, take the print copy. I'm really impressed.
See, now for me, if I got I couldn't read it. But here's the thing. If they sent it to me in Braille, no one what the hell that is.
No one would know.
My parents can't read Braille.
Yeah, so, well, you don't even live with them anyway. So.
I don't. But if I did, I'd be like, well, because, if I knew you were blind, I'd be like, can you make sure it's sent in Braille to me?
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
It's hard because, we actually came from a situation where we were both living in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom lived right next door to us. Okay, now, she has no clue that I'm even on this path. She doesn't have she thinks I'm going to church and everything.
Right.
But the reason why, one of the real big reasons why we moved was because of, I had a job at the church as a music director, and it was just getting to get really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was one of those things where I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt like my mom was like Big Brother or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
she's
scary.
Watching me.
But see, that tension right there is exactly why we use satanic imagery, because
exactly.
Yes, that would be a little bit if you said, yeah, well, I follow this other dark god, this other whatever set. Who's Set? Okay, well, it would still be hard because she's super Catholic, and anything not Catholic is wrong.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be as wrong as Satan.
Oh, she'd probably try to get me into a priest.
Yeah. So, it's this tension right here is the challenge, is the reason why we do this, because it's really easy to say, oh, yeah, well, I'm not really going to challenge myself. I'm just going to, follow some other dark being, dark deity or whatever, and use them.
It's kind of the easy way out.
Yeah.
To be a pagan. I shouldn't say, but to say, to be like that and follow those deities. I'm not saying you can't, in your own, whatever you do.
Right.
I take from a whole bunch of different things,
Well, the first step upon the left-hand path is rebellion.
Yep.
And, the first of the gatekeepers is Belial, which is all about breaking old chains and separating yourself from the way of things.
Yep.
And so, in the beginning especially, it's important that you really do challenge yourself and use something that is closer to your mythology of origin, that is perhaps uncomfortable to you, or that does speak to you on a more personal level. Again, if you're in India and you're Hindu or something like that, then it could be totally different. I'm not familiar enough with those to say what that could be.
Probably. Well, Kali, maybe?
Well, Kali is the dark goddess, but a lot of people worship
That's
Kali.
True.
So.
And therein lies the point. They must not see good and evil the same way.
No, I think it's a totally different culture, but
yeah.
I can only speak from our Western perspective. But
if there are any Indians listening and want to enlighten us,
yeah,
that'd be very fascinating.
Absolutely. But, in the Western culture we have today, the most challenging is going to be Satan and the other demons, right? So that is the most challenging, and it speaks the most to us today, right? And so that's why I suggest using this imagery, because it's sort of like there's a value in blasphemy, and I'm not saying everyone has to do that. I never really did that myself too much, not extensively. But when you're really, really tied up in, let's say, the Abrahamic religions, and you really, really want to cut that off, a lot of people use blasphemy. You hear about the Black Mass, or you hear about whatever. I'm not saying all that's necessary. It might be a very personal ritual to you, or something else. But, there's a value in blasphemy because it cuts those old ties. Because again, when you just say, well, yeah, I'm just going to follow some other dark god, then there's this part of you that says, well, I haven't really, I've done all this, but I haven't really done, I haven't gone to Satan. So there's still some redemption left for me, right? There's still some chance in case they change my mind, or in case whatever.
Yeah, that's how I was feeling for a long time.
Right. I haven't gone all the way to the dark. I mean, I'm just dealing with Loki or Set or Ahriman or whoever. So, it's not Satan. Well, why not? There's a freedom in just going all the way and working with Satan or Lucifer, as it were, or any of the other demons. There's a freedom in that, because it's this thing you avoided your whole life because you heard it was wrong, and then you try it, and then you experience freedom from it. I guarantee you'll experience freedom from it. And it's an enlightening moment, No pun intended. It's an enlightening
Or
moment.
a darkening moment?
Yeah, whatever.
Just kidding.
You know, it's an enlightening moment because it's like, this thing I feared, this thing people told me to fear, is actually really freeing.
Yeah. You know, and I was expecting a whole bunch of bad stuff to happen to me.
Uh-huh.
And I'm doing it, I'm like, and I'm on my guard. I guess I'll always be on my guard because, you know, you've got to be careful anyway. But, or I'll always, like, it's in the back of my mind, you know. Not as much now, obviously, but you always remember where you came from, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm not possessed. At least I don't think so. Melektoth might know, especially when I go into my, get upset about things.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. But I'm not possessed, you know, and I'm not influenced. Well, I guess I am. But
Everyone's
that's what
influenced by something.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the challenge because, you know, it's so relevant to us. It's so much, even if you think there's no influence there from Christianity, just because society is so influenced by it, there absolutely is an influence. Right. So if you say, I'm working with Satan, I'm not even if you do this in public, just even in your own personal life, this is so much of a rebellion and antinomian current in your life that it will be reflected, even if no one else knows. I'm not saying to go advertise it to the world.
Don't.
Right?
Well, you could if you
could.
want.
Some people do, but I'm not saying you have to do that. But the very fact of doing it will be reflected in your life and in your attitudes, and it will free you from any leftover chains to that old way of thinking. So will something else do that? No, I don't think it will, because it just isn't relevant, right? So that's just the power of it. Now, the thing is that as you get into black magic, okay, you will work with all sorts of different types of spirits. I'm not saying you have to dedicate your whole life to demons or something. You will get into other systems. You may get into other gods, other dark beings from other cultures, other systems, not because it's the easy way out anymore, but because they speak to you, they come to you and invite you to work with them. And so then, okay, you know, you'll find yourself doing different things, and you might work with Lucifer or someone else, and then you might work with Ahriman. Ahriman is like apparently one of the first devil figures. He's from Zoroastrianism, and he's basically darkness incarnate, or
That
just
is
the
so cool.
darkness itself, darkness per se. He's someone I've been sort of attracted to overall. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but there's a book written about him that I'm thinking about.
You should.
I know. But, you know, Ahriman's another one, like I said, Set, people like that, or deities like that. But you'll do it not because, you know, they sound cool, or because, well, you know, I don't want to go with Satan. I don't want to go all the way dark, so I'll just check out someone else. No, you've already done all that, but you do it because of something else, because they speak to you. You know, they come to you in some way, or you feel inspired to, or whatever. You'll get, you know, you'll become influenced by all these different currents as you go along. And your particular expertise, your particular mastery will present itself in time. And that's fine. But I would, at the very least, begin with Satan and the demons and whatnot, with satanic imagery. Because, again, that's what we are dealing with today. And so, you know, that's going to be the biggest challenge to you. And so if there's any leftover uncertainty, I mean, I had someone sign up for a course I was doing on black magic and then almost immediately cancel. And he was like, yeah, I should have figured it was demons, but I don't know why I didn't. And it's just not for me. Like, I don't do demons. A lot of people just don't have that strength for, you know, working with demons. And, you know, maybe it's not where they are on their path. Maybe they're just too challenged by it. Maybe they think it's too dark, you know, whatever. But this path, and I say this and it scares people sometimes, but it has to be said, this path has a sort of self-refining quality about it. And what I mean by that is that it sort of filters out those who aren't serious. It sort of filters out the dabblers.
Yep.
Not to say you can't, be curious and check it out, but as you go deeper into it, it sort of filters out the dabblers, filters out those who aren't ready for it, because it is a pretty intense path, and that's just how it is. So I don't believe you should do anything to make that process easier. I believe doing anything to make it easier is just really robbing yourself of that opportunity for growth. That's my belief about it. That's how I've experienced it. But you will be challenged. Like I said, these are very real forces. And as you open up to these forces of darkness, as I'm calling them generalized, or demons, or whatever you want to call them, but as you open up to these forces of darkness, in whatever system, you will be challenged, you will be changed, things will happen. Good and not necessarily bad, but, trials and whatnot. It's good and bad. So things will happen.
Stuff always happens to make you grow.
Yeah.
Christians would call it suffering or persecution, but we know that on this path they kind of have to happen so you can grow.
Exactly.
Because things can't always be roses.
Right. And so, as you interact with these forces, they will show you where you need the most growth. They will challenge you. And you'll have immense benefits as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I first got into it, I couldn't believe everything just went so much more smoothly. Everything just started working.
Yeah. It's like you got the right computer part.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty much exactly like that. Like, I got a faster processor or something, and things just started clicking into place. And, things started working. It was a pretty amazing experience, and it still is. All the time things happen. I'm like, wow, I didn't even really try for that, but it just happens, and it's astonishing. It's really interesting how that happens. So, as you come into contact with this, that will take place, and I encourage you not to hold back. I know this darkness stuff seems pretty intense, and
it is even for me sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I'm like, I just can't think about it right now.
Right. And a lot of the imagery, especially as you go deeper, is pretty challenging. Yeah. I mean, there's a ritual I have not personally done yet. It's on my to-do list, called the Lake of Fire, right? And it's in imitation of the Christian concept of the Lake of Fire. And so you could look at that and you might at first think, oh yeah, I have no leftover programming. And then you look at the Lake of Fire and say, wait a second. That sounds a little scary.
And apparently it really hurts.
Yeah, I've heard that. But spiritually speaking, not physically, obviously.
Oh, I thought you actually felt everything physically.
Well, there's no physical injury is what I wanted to clarify.
No.
It's more of an emotional, psychological, mental thing. But, the Lake of Fire is a pretty intense ritual, and that is a huge challenge because it's like one of those concepts in the mythology of Christianity that's like, those who go in the Lake of Fire burn forever and blah, 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 whatever. So it's just where I would start. And as you get into it, you may be led to other things, and that's perfectly okay. But let yourself come into it and naturally find the path that works for you. You may work with only these demons. You may start to work with other beings. You may mix and match. It's all real. It's all meaningful, but it has to have meaning to you for it to do anything. But the first step on the left-hand path is rebellion and destroying the old in yourself, which means destroying the old images or chains that hold you to your old irrational ways of thinking, your old, religion or whatever it might be. Okay, and so that's why I suggest satanic imagery. Now, like I said, you might not go out and say, I'm a Satanist or I'm a Luciferian. I mean, you might. Personally, like I wear a pentagram, an upside down pentagram.
Me too.
I've never gotten a comment about it, by the way. But
I know, I haven't either.
And I don't do this stuff to be edgy or to look cool or to get criticism or commentary or whatever. I don't do it for that reason. I do it because it's a symbol of my practice, and I want to. But it's also a challenge because, it's upside down pentagram is like that universal mark of evil or of Satan or whatever. So, someone could say something, that's fine. Personally, I don't fear that. I've always expressed my own beliefs through either, pendants I wear or tattoos or whatever. I have 2 tattoos. One is an Om symbol, because I'm really connected to the Eastern traditions, and one is the sigil of Lucifer, and that's big for me. But we don't do this to be edgy or to look cool or to be intense or dramatic. Okay, some people might, but not me, and I don't recommend it.
And one of the authors that you talk about said a lot of your black magicians are in jeans and a sweatshirt.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
They're normal people.
Normal people, yeah. They're just everyday people. You might not know, that they're black magicians. They don't go out advertising it. I'm not saying you should advertise it, but, that's how it is. So hopefully this clarifies things. It's a pretty intense subject, and it's very personal. And, obviously, like I said, my recommendation is to go with it 100%. But you're the only one who will know if and when you're ready for that.
And it might take time, and that's okay.
Right.
Start slow,
right,
if you have to.
So, you'll know because this stuff will speak to you. Those who have communicated to me the responses, their feelings about this work, these podcasts and everything else I do, have just said, I'm ready for this. I'm just tired of what I was doing. I'm tired of the right-hand path. This just speaks to me. And, increasingly, like I work with Lucifer quite a bit. He's my main demon.
He's my demon.
It came across weird anyway, but he's my primary demon that I work with, and he's awesome, just frankly. And he's told me in our communications, basically, you don't have to really do much to sell what you do, to not to convert, but to turn people onto what you do, because those who are ready for it will be drawn to it. And the imagery I've gotten is sort of, like I said, this self-refining, self-filtering process or system, right? Those who are ready for it will be drawn to it. Those who aren't will be scared away. There are very few. This is sort of something you either love or hate. It's really hard to have a neutral reaction about it, or it's pretty good, You're either going to be like, oh, this is so interesting and this is so cool, or I'm going to run away, And so he's told me, like, those who are ready for it are going to come. Those who aren't are going to be scared off, and you don't really have to do too much. So I just do what I do. I just do the podcast. I just send my emails. I just put it out there. And I find that people are interested. And I was nervous about this. Dark Ascent used to be called co-creation coaching. And I used to do law of attraction coaching until, I really got into black magic more. My whole process of transitioning, I see, is about 2 years in coming.
Oh yeah, it was a long time.
But I stubbornly hung on to the law of attraction label for a long time, just because I thought, well, this is what people are looking for. And as I got the calling to rename it to Dark Ascent and to talk about black magic openly and to teach about this stuff, I really got nervous, like, hey, no one's going to be open to this. Like, what. And I sort of see myself as, I don't want to say the gatekeeper, but in a sense, between the law of attraction and black magic, because I've been on the path of the law of attraction and I know how they think. I know why they'd be scared off by this, but I also know their frustrations. Mm-hmm. I know why it's not enough, and I know why it will only lead to frustration if you just do the law of attraction. Yep. And so I see myself as this transitional point,
the bridge
between the law of attraction and black magic. And so I'm not really speaking to advanced black magicians. I mean, hey, if you're a black magician and you're listening to this and you're advanced, hey, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. But I think overall, I'm reaching out to those who are very new to this, very unsure, but intrigued. And so my goal is for my work to call to those people and to invite you in for more. And you'll either listen or you won't. There won't really be much in between.
No.
And I've seen that. I've seen people kind of, this looks interesting. No, not for me. Or, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, this is great. Those two responses is pretty much what I've gotten.
Yep.
But nothing in between. Nothing in between. I got a huge unsubscribe rate on my mailing list when I first, which is what I expected. And, I wanted that. But that's how it works. And so you'll know if this stuff is right for you because it speaks to you. It speaks to you and it calls you deeper, and don't resist that. The more you resist that, the harder it will go for you. And it will call you deeper and you'll want to learn more. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So I want to invite you that if that is you, like I said, we're doing the Circle of Darkness newsletter that we're starting in March. And so you can check that out on our website at darkascent.org/circle. And that would be kind of the next step if you really want to go deeper with this and learn more and see where it goes for you. So I thank you for listening to our podcast. And I really do appreciate you spending time with us here every week. It means a lot. I'd love if you reach out to us. You can comment on our website or see our show notes. You can go to darkascent.org/DA005. And so once again, we are here every Friday. We have another episode of Dark Ascent, and so we hope to see you next Friday. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Dark Ascent.